All right, everyone, it's 2 o'clock. I know that you're all still getting seated. Don't worry about it. Take your time. But I have 45 slides, 1 hour, and a lot of nonsense to talk about. So how are we doing, MAGFest? Who partied too hard on day 0? It's me. Hopefully I don't lose my voice by the end of this, so I'm going to get started. Welcome to State's Attorney Investigations. I did this panel here last year, but now I'm doing this panel live stream, so hoo boy, no pressure, MAGFest. So the first thing I want to talk about is that this is the panel where I tell you that the wildest thing you've ever seen in Ace Attorney is still the most mundane thing that I've ever seen in a real life courtroom. And that is because I spend my life in courtrooms. So I am actually an attorney. I'm an attorney here in Maryland. I was admitted to the Maryland bar all the way back in 2020. Imagine starting your career during COVID. Definitely a weird experience. I am a prosecutor specifically, so like this isn't necessarily just a costume. I actually have worn most of these clothes to court aside from the wig. When I went to law school in Pennsylvania at Drexel in Philadelphia, you might know them as district attorneys. Here in Maryland, we're called assistant state's attorneys. But no matter what we're called, we do kind of all do the same thing. I'm a prosecutor. I present evidence, testimony, etc. in a case against a defendant, someone who's accused of breaking the law. So I have a lot of stuff on this slide about a little bit about what we do, kind of no matter where we are. Some of these things that you do actually see in the games. Most of these things you do not because they don't go into that much detail. But I've been a prosecutor since May of 2022, so I'm coming up on 3 years. And in that short amount of time, I have done just about everything that there is to do. I've handled domestic violence cases, probation violations. I've done a lot of assault cases, harassment, stalking. I have handled felony cases. I am currently second chair on an attempted first-degree murder, as well as an actual first-degree murder case. I've done a lot of violations of probation for different types of cases, protective orders, stuff like that. I spend most of my time in traffic court, which all of my coworkers hate it and I love it. So I've done a lot of serious traffic matters. So I prosecuted DUIs, do a lot of hit and runs, driving without a license, driving suspended. I have indicted cases before a grand jury, generally felony cases. The primary assignment that I have at my office is, unfortunately, no one's gonna like this, animal cruelty. So I'm an animal cruelty case specialist. We're not going to talk about that anymore. You guys are here to have a good time, not a bad time. I like to think that all of these things qualify me to do this panel somewhat, but really, I think the most thing that qualifies me the most is that my life is a bit and I'm fully committed to it. So that is my car. She's in the garage behind the Gaylord. I got into the Gaylord this year. I'm so happy. That's why I have short sleeves on, because otherwise I'd be freezing my ass off. So if you see her in the parking garage behind the Gaylord, say hi. She's definitely covered in snow and salt and is disgusting looking. And yes, in fact, after I became a prosecutor in 2022, that tattoo is real. So that's a picture right after it was done. I still have it. It's never going away. I think I'm institutionalized at this point. I don't think I can do anything else. Literally, you want to talk about some dedication? Here it is. There's all kinds of reasons that I went to law school, but I'm not going to lie, the little pixelated lawyers were a big one. I played the games when I was in college, going through law school. And fun fact, that prosecutor's badge is tattooed on me. I have another one right here in case you couldn't see it the first time. But yes, as prosecutors, we really do get badges. So I actually do have a prosecutor's badge. They look nothing like the games. But it does sometimes get me discounts at stores and restaurants. So I'll take it. It's not as fun looking. It's not as fancy, but I'll take it. Before I go any further into this, like, I shouldn't have to say this, but a lot of laws exist because we think things are common sense and then we find out that they're not. This is just fun. This is silly. We're all here to have a good time. None of this is legal advice. I'm not your lawyer. You guys are not my clients. Thank God, because I don't want clients. My client, if I have one at all, is the nebulous entity that is the state. It never talks back to me. It always pays me on time and in full, thankfully. No, I don't know what a billable hour is, and at this point, I am too afraid to ask. So obviously, as a prosecutor, this is a prosecutor heavy. So one of the things that I have to take into account when I do this is it's possible that there might be a lot of people in this room that actually don't really know what it is a prosecutor does. Maybe you've never had any contact with the criminal justice system. Maybe you've only ever watched a movie or two, or maybe a TV show. Maybe you've only ever played or heard about these games. So what does a prosecutor actually do? Well, I can say first off that we're not all Manfred von Karma, okay? My job description did not say send everyone to jail, find every defendant guilty, keep track of your win-loss record, and you better win more than you lose. What's my win-loss record? I don't know. I don't care. I have bigger things to worry about. I like to describe my job as accountability. So when I have a victim of a crime who has been wronged in some way, I have to seek justice for them. That's what my responsibility is. It's not to get everybody convicted, because sometimes I've had cases that I lost, and I lose many, and you lose for a reason sometimes. It's to do justice, and justice is going to look different in every case. I could have 5 of the same type of crime, and every one of those cases could look a little bit different because they're all individualized. We have all kinds of things that we do before we think about sending someone to jail. It is generally the last resort. Most prosecutors' offices are going to have things like alternative sanctions. Programs where instead of going to trial, we have you get into a treatment program, or we have you do community service. In Pennsylvania, where I went to law school, they have something called accelerated rehabilitative disposition. Things don't go on your record the same way they would if you've been convicted or pled guilty. Probation before judgment is a thing that we have here in Maryland. It's very similar. If you do what you're supposed to on that period, it never goes on your record the same way that it would had it been a plea or even a trial and you're found guilty. We can get people into treatment programs, have them do community service. Anger management or abuser intervention happens a lot in domestic violence cases, parenting classes and neglect cases, counseling, mediation. There is so much out there that we can use to get to the root of the problem, because when you address that, then you don't have any further issues. On the other hand, if you kill someone, I'm sorry, do not pass go, do not collect $200, you are likely going directly to jail. That is generally how that works. Another thing a lot of people may not realize is the concept of prosecutorial discretion. So the feelings and wishes of a crime victim are given great weight. We listen to them, but they do not control what the state does with the case. When I am in court, I am the state. And when that case is on my desk, it is my responsibility, but I can handle it how I see fit. We don't prosecute cases that we can't prove beyond a reasonable doubt, because that is always the government's burden. That's the state's burden. If there's a procedural or constitutional flaw, a bad arrest, a violation of, the Fourth Amendment, a bad search or seizure, we get rid of those. We don't prosecute cases that we know shouldn't go forward. When you are a prosecutor, and to an extent even, any type of law that you do, you're going to wield a lot of power, a lot of resources. In my case, I wield all the power and resources of the state, but you also have to think about the responsibility that comes with it. This is a quote that I found from a very old case, Supreme Court case. If you're in the criminal law, especially as a prosecutor, this is one you're going to recognize almost right away. I took an oath on this. It's not that I have to win every case that I prosecute, it's that justice shall be done. And perhaps me losing that case is justice being done. So every case, everything is going to look a little bit different. Manfred von Karma took one look at this case and he was like, but nah, actually. This is it. This is all you need. Someone's like, who's Manfred von Karma? I'm like, this. You just need this one image. You can summarize him as a character in his entirety. Similarly, you can very succinctly summarize the entire judicial system in Ace Attorney by the worst case in the entire series. I will fight anyone about this. We don't need Turnabout Big Top 3-3. Why was that case in this case? I don't care, okay? Like, there's a parking lot out there and we can go have a fight about it. I'm from New Jersey, whatever. This is it. This is the duality of man right here. We all know that Ace Attorney obviously is Phoenix defending his clients from all these like batshit ridiculous murder charges. There's that one weird civil case in Spirit of Justice. I hated that one. What most people don't know when they play these games, though, is that there are so many little details in real court systems. What you're seeing in the games, obviously a little bit of entertainment value. They're pulling a little bit from real life. Capcom obviously is making this with a Japanese audience in mind. And what's really interesting is when they localize it to an American audience, they have to localize it to something that we understand, something that's grounded enough in reality that we're like, okay, this isn't just complete nonsense. Like, you can play these games, you can have a good time, and you can get lost in them, and they're a little believable. So the localized versions, which is what obviously I'm pulling from, I'm talking about here, they're really interesting because you get this little bit of hodgepodge of both, where you see some things that you're like, that makes sense, and then you see some things where you're like, what the hell is going on? So if you want to know how screwed up the court system is in Ace Attorney, you have to know some things about a real court system that sort of actually does make sense. And you have to ask yourself a very important question. This one. This is 6-1. This is the foreign turnabout. We have all asked ourselves this exact question. Oh, it's not entirely aligned. It says, what kind of insane court system are they running here? We have all asked ourselves this exact question at least once during any given Ace Attorney game, and I have asked myself this question in real life courtrooms. I've been doing this for a very long time, and there are still days where I feel like this when I walk in. So of all the things I talk about, all the things you see in Ace Attorney, this is going to be the most accurate thing. Bar none, nothing else. Don't worry about it. If anything, all you need is to remember this. So one of the things that you never actually see in Ace Attorney is, how do we get to court? How are cases charged? Are they indicted? Are they charged by the police? We just start the first day of trial, and Phoenix is already just kind of picking crap up off the ground and putting it in his pocket and hoping it'll be helpful later. So I'm not talking about Phoenix's bicycle versus like Edgeworth's sports car. How do the attorneys actually get to court? How do you get a criminal case or any case into court? So generally for a criminal case, a case is going to be indicted by a grand jury. I've done that. That's one thing I think a lot of people are most familiar with. Any high-profile cases you hear about on the news, you're going to hear about indictment, grand juries. They can also be charged by police or even private citizens. Some states, like Maryland, we allow charges where a citizen can go to a commissioner, swear out a statement of charges, and if there's criminal conduct, the charges will be issued. So you either do it with the grand jury, or it's charged. In Maryland, they're commissioners. In Pennsylvania, they're magisterial district judges. Either way, however you do it, what's next once the case is actually charged? You have to look at two things. You have to look at jurisdiction, subject matter, and personal. So we're talking about two different things. Does the court have the authority over the parties that it needs, but also the legal power to hear the case at all? So this is very much law school 101, whether criminal procedure, civil procedure. This is one of the foundational first things you learn, because if you don't have this, then you don't have a case at all. So subject matter jurisdiction just means, are you in the correct type of court for the case that you have? For example, here in Maryland, if you're going to get divorced, you go to your local circuit courthouse. You're not going to go to the federal courthouse because they're going to turn around and kick you out. That's not something that they handle. That is not their jurisdiction. Personal jurisdiction, on the other hand, is exercising control over the defendant themselves. So, for example, we're here in Prince George's County, Maryland. If something happened to me here at MAGFest, a crime committed against me, please don't, I'm just trying to have a good time and be away from work. If someone committed a crime against me here, if I drive an hour home to where I live, the county I live in, I can't say, well, can we do it here? I don't want to go back to the Gaylord. I would never say that. I always love coming here. But like, I can't say, can we just do it here? I don't want to. No, the crime happened here. So Prince George's County, their office has the power to, and their courts have the power to hear the criminal case. Their state's attorney's office is going to prosecute it. Some crimes, not very many, but some of them are what we call continuing crimes. For example, if somebody steals a car in Baltimore City and then they drive it all the way here to MAGFest, I hope none of you did that, you could be prosecuted in Baltimore City where you stole it, here in PG County where you were found with it, or anywhere you got caught along the way, because the possession of the stolen property is the crime. So it's following you. You are committing that crime no matter where you go. So there are some times where maybe multiple places could charge a crime, could prosecute it, but generally it's going to be where the crime actually happened. If you are missing even one of these elements, you don't have jurisdiction and that court cannot hear your case. Sorry, Phoenix, your case is in another courtroom. So I actually looked. We all call it Japanifornia, the localized mishmash that we're just stuck living with now because honestly, Capcom is as committed to the bit as I am. And in the games, we see that Phoenix is always in the LA District Court, and they do everything. It's all his murder cases, the one civil case in Spirit of Justice. So I went and looked. I said, obviously, they're basing it out of California. What is California's court system actually like? What do they do? How do they handle this? So I looked, and the Superior Court is the base trial level court in California. And indeed, it says all criminal and civil trials are handled at the Superior Court level. So this is extremely accurate. They got this perfectly right. There are some places where there are not split levels of trial courts. Phoenix doing everything in one courtroom makes perfect sense here. I did check. There are 36 trial level courthouses in LA County alone. Compare that to our Baltimore City here. I believe what I looked up is it has 5. So I'm pretty sure that the reason he takes cases in that one courthouse all the time is it's probably the first one that he can bike to. I don't think he can get to the other 35 elsewhere in LA County, so I don't blame him. On the other hand, places here like Maryland and where I went to law school in Pennsylvania and Maryland both have a split trial level court system. So here's a bunch of reasons that we don't want these games to happen in Maryland and then also Pennsylvania. I'm not going to talk through all of this, obviously, but you can see the district court is the base level trial court. There's certain things that are handled down there. Then there's the circuit court, which is also a trial level court, but you're going to have a lot more serious stuff happen there, a lot of different things. Biggest difference in district court, there are never jury trials, and circuit court, that's where jury trials can happen. And then this absolute nonsense here at the bottom where it's like, hey, do you pick one? I don't know, you figure it out. So it gets messy depending on what state you're in and what kind of case it is. So the fact that they localized this to California and they made it easy, good job, Capcom. So now that we know which courtroom we're in, what can you do while you're in there? Well, I guarantee you the first time you ever set foot into a courtroom or the 30th, whatever, you're going to make this face. This is exactly what it feels like to walk into a courtroom for the first time, and I'm gonna be honest, sometimes I've been doing this for years and years, sometimes I still feel like this. I felt like this more often in Philadelphia, working in the Philadelphia courts than I did here in Maryland, but your mileage may vary. Other things that you can do when you walk into court, and yes, these are all real examples that I have from my real life. You can be a bailiff, you could draw a picture during my jury trial, and then when I'm done, you can show it to me. So I guess he really didn't care about my jury trial, or he got bored, but he decided to draw a picture. And when we were done, he's like, hey, by the way, you want to see this? I was like, well, yeah, now I have to. I didn't tell him, but I was like, I got to take a picture of this for my panel. Holy crap. Another thing you can do is you can be my co-counsel, my public defender in a district court docket. Judge is not on the bench yet. We're just waiting. So you whip out your phone and you play Pokemon Go. So, sometimes there's laws and then sometimes there's no laws, whatever. All right, real things that you are supposed to do in court to behave. A lot of this list, I hope, is very obvious. I don't really have to explain it. You just have to be respectful, behave, be quiet so that, the microphones, everything's picked up. One big one that they never explain, they always just tell you, take your hats and your hoods off, but they generally never explain why, so some people might not know why. Historically, this is a historical thing, hats would announce your social status. So taking your hat off was a gesture of respect. You deferred your status to the authority in the room, that authority being the judge. So obviously there's an exception for headwear worn for religious purposes, but what you're doing is that we are all acknowledging that we are all equal under the law, equal before the judge in the courtroom. So nobody ever explains it, but next time you're told to do that, now you know why. You can also be the bailiffs in one of my district court dockets, and you can draw a visual representation of what's going to happen if you take your phone out. I will say the attorneys, we do not have to take our phones. We don't have to turn them off or silent them. I mean, you have to have them quiet. But I look at my phone all the time when I'm in court because I'm a lawyer and I get 300 emails a minute. So sometimes I might have to respond to one while I'm sitting there, multitasking. But the bailiffs for my courtroom decided to have some fun. And frankly, this picture terrifies me because they apparently behind the courtroom had a hammer that was strong enough to destroy a Nokia phone. So I would not have taken my phone out during this docket if I were someone in the gallery. So now that you know what you are supposed to do in the courtroom, what are you not supposed to do in the courtroom? Well, I'm going to tell you right now, it's everything you see in this damn game. I swear to God, none of these people know how to behave. This is just like... This is just a personal sampling of my favorite nonsense that you see in the games. Your mileage may vary. You may have something even funnier. But these were my favorites for this panel. And actually, that first one, the reason I put this one first is the testifying via the drone. When Army Buff does that, I'm pretty sure that happens in the 5th game, it's Spirit of Justice, or whatever number 5 was. I don't know, I don't remember. That is the 6th game. See, fake fan, I need to get out of here. I'm not qualified. That one's really interesting because that's going to catch the eye of any attorney or anyone who is experienced in criminal law, because I think, obviously, that is a 6th Amendment confrontation clause issue. So you have a constitutional problem with him doing that. The 6th Amendment to the Constitution provides that in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to be confronted by the witnesses against them. Now, except for some extremely limited circumstances that I don't have time to go into here, that's going to mean in person, on the witness stand, your face, your body, visible. Your demeanor and your body language are all part of the credibility determination that either the judge or the jury, whoever the fact finder is making when they're hearing the case. So if you have someone who is upright on the stand, they're dressed nice, they're speaking clearly into the microphone, they're making eye contact with the jury, a jury is probably going to pay attention to them a little more and give more weight, more credibility, believe them more trustworthy than somebody who's testifying on the stand who looks like they rolled out of bed and they're looking at the floor and they're mumbling into the microphone and they won't look at the jury. It's all about, they're judging everything. So that's why this is so important. And when he testifies via the drone, you don't have any of that. How do we know he's not just reading from a script or somebody's telling him what to say? That's why this is so egregious. In Shelley DeKiller, when he testifies via the radio transceiver, when Maya's been kidnapped, that's the same thing. Like, nobody thinks there's a problem with that except, like, me. But whatever. That's why I'm up here, I guess. The eating also particularly pisses me off because I've been before judges who actually just whip out a snack and they start eating on the bench. And I'm like, for the love of God, Your Honor, please, can you not? Like, now I'm hungry and I don't want to do this anymore. And now I'm mad and it's just bad for everybody. But when you wear the robe, you can do pretty much whatever you want, including not zip it up sometimes, because I've seen judges who don't even bother to do that. Larry is on here with nothing next to him because he's just Larry. I don't have to say anything else about him. My personal favorite on this list is the telling bad jokes. So when Mo the Clown, he whips out one bad joke and the judge is like, we're not doing this. He shuts him down immediately. I feel like that is the only rule that is actually ever strictly enforced. Like, everything else is out the window, but Mo the Clown is not allowed to tell a bad joke. You are also not allowed to do this. Do you understand how much I want to just sit at counsel table with my feet up on the table, a glass of wine or something similar in my hand, give one to me, give one to the judge, give one to the defense attorney. The docket's going to be over at 15 minutes, okay? My job would be so much easier if I could do this, but alas, I cannot. However, you can have a cup of coffee or something with you. You just can't throw it at anybody. I'm sorry. I know. Cruel world we live in, isn't it? Next, I have a selection of things that either my coworkers have seen, I have personally seen, or you can read about that have actually happened. These are like super really big no-nos that you're not supposed to do. A lot of these things, yes, I have seen them happen. The throwing the shoe is actually my favorite story to tell from my time working in Philadelphia. So when I was in law school, I worked for a judge in Philadelphia in Center City. I went to Drexel, so 34th and Market. Any Philly gang here, by the way? Any real ones? And by real ones, I mean you can spell Schuylkill, okay? Balakinwood is acceptable. But I worked for a judge in Philadelphia, and we had a sentencing for someone, and a lot of people on the defendant's family, a lot of people there for the victim's family, and at the end, he ruled in a way that the defendant's family evidently didn't like, because as soon as he banged the little gavel, some guy on the defendant's side of the family stood up, took his shoe off, and like, we didn't have Vine yet, I don't think, but this was definitely like a yeet. Like, he threw it directly across the courtroom. He missed the judge by like 6-7 feet. It just hit the wall. And then the judge doesn't flinch. The court reporter and the staff don't flinch. And then like 5 bailiffs attack this dude all at once. And I think they literally dragged him like kicking and screaming, missing a shoe out of the courtroom. It's a testament to Philadelphia and their courtrooms and their staff that nobody flinched. Like, nobody thought anything of it. That was just literally a Tuesday in Philadelphia. Go Birds or whatever. We've all seen the video of the guy leaping across the bench to body slam the judge. I'm frankly amazed that it's been 5 years almost of me being a lawyer, and I haven't seen that yet. When's my turn? The eating a piece of evidence during trial. You think I'm kidding. No, I'm not. Put one up for Maryland, because that's where this case happened. In 1975... it's worse. Maryland's done a lot more egregious things I'm going to talk about. In 1975, a defendant was going on trial for narcotics charges, drug trafficking. He was alleged to be a dealer. Couple days go by, they're getting through the trial, and then all of a sudden at some point a juror sends a handwritten note to the judge that says, "We saw the defendant take something off of the table and he ate it." So of course they stop the whole trial, they stop everything, and they're trying to figure out what's missing. So they're looking, and the prosecution is like, "Hey, I think we're missing this piece of paper. Like, I think it was supposed to be what's alleged to be like a ledger of his transactions." Something important, obviously, evidence for the prosecution. And they eventually ask him, or they tell him, like, "We're looking for something, like this is what's happening." He goes, "Oh, the piece of paper. Oh, I ate it." So he straight up just took a piece of evidence and he ate it, I guess thinking nobody was gonna see it, but the jury did. So yes, there's definitely a mistrial was declared after he admitted to eating the piece of paper. A mistrial is essentially a reset. You Control, Alt, Delete, Task Manager, close everything, and you start all the way over. It's as if everything in this initial trial didn't happen. So he was retried, he was found guilty, and interestingly, one of the things that they were able to do at the second trial was tell the jury that he ate the piece of paper. They were able to tell the jury, "We had this piece of paper. We were going to tell you it was a ledger of his transactions, but we don't have it anymore because he ate it. So, like, do with that information what you will." And they did, and he was found guilty. So, sorry, Phoenix, you are not the first person to do this. You probably will not be the last person either. Does art imitate life, or does life imitate art? I don't know. I don't care. Speaking of life imitating art, I got 2 really big things I know you're all here for, and this is the first one. A parrot being involved in a murder case couldn't possibly be something that's happened in real life. JK. So in 2017, a jury in Michigan convicted a woman of first-degree murder. She shot and killed her husband. So after he was killed, she's obviously held in jail. The victim's ex-wife took in this pet parrot that the couple had had. She has it for a little while, and then all of a sudden, a couple weeks later, it starts repeating this really nasty, really loud, raucous argument in what they believed were these distinct male and female voices, and it always ended in the man's voice saying, "Don't shoot, don't shoot." So everybody started to wonder, well, where the hell did the parrot learn this? Like, they don't just generally come up with this stuff on their own. So did the parrot actually see one of their arguments, or even the last argument before she shot him? So for like a half a second, literally, prosecutors did consider how they might have to get this into evidence at trial. This is not an utterance per the rules of evidence because this is not something said by a human. However, in some way, shape, or form, like I just know it's relevant. I don't know how, I just know that it is. It remains an unanswered legal question because ultimately they had more than enough without the parrot. Unfortunately for me, this panel and all of us, they didn't use it, so I don't have an answer for you. It was an African gray parrot named Bud. They can actually mimic, one of the reasons they looked into this is because they can mimic human speech. They can learn words. They have the cognitive ability of a young child. So it's conceivable that a young child could have repeated this and overheard it. Why not the parrot? And then you get this amazing headline. This is a real headline that I pulled from a real YouTube video because this is my life. This is an Ace Attorney headline, okay? I'm sorry. You can't make this shit up. Lotta Hart's big break was this. Like, I'm convinced that she wrote this after 1-4. And I have to stress when I do this panel that, yes, Ace Attorney is a very unrealistic game. But it's not because the things you see in the games could never happen. It's because the things that you see in the games aren't bullshit enough compared to the crap you see IRL, as I have shown you. So once you get your courtroom, you know how to behave, hopefully. How do you wish to be tried? This is a real question that you're going to get asked by the judge if you are eligible for a jury trial. You have to answer. Do you wish to be tried by a judge or a jury? There are a lot of advantages and disadvantages depending on whether you think you want a jury trial or not. These are a lot of reasons why you might want a judge to try your case, to hear your case. One of the big things with juries is that, for the most part, they're lay people. They're not experienced in the law. They've never, probably may not have even looked at some statutes or anything like that. You have to teach them what the law is. You have to give them jury instructions, tell them what the law is, and then hope to God they understand it, and then they have a verdict that makes sense. So you're putting a lot on them to be able to do that. With a judge, you don't have to tell them what the law is. They are experienced. There's basically nothing they haven't seen before. You're not going to shock them. You're not going to emotionally overwhelm them. You're going to have a bit of an easier time. Maybe your case is really complex. Your elements of your crime are really complex, and you don't want to have to sit through, the jury might deliberate for 3 days. You have no idea. So you might want a judge. The attorneys, we might argue over how the judge is to rule in the case based on the law, but it's not something that we have to teach the judge what the law is. And you're going to have times where you want a jury trial because maybe there's, an experience you think jurors have that a judge is not going to have. Your goal always is to have an impartial jury. You don't want them swayed by prejudices or pity, but we're all human. Juries are far from perfect, so sometimes that's a chance you don't want to take. You might have a romantic arrangement or a lifestyle or something else in a case that you don't want to risk some sort of bias. And so you have your case tried by a judge who knows for a fact they're not going to worry about any of that. They're not going to hold that against, the defendant. Also, maybe sometimes the judge is just a little guy and you want your case tried by a little guy. Not a single one of these judges has an accurate robe on. I don't know how this happened. The classic judge on the far left, I don't know what he's doing after court. Why is he wearing a crop top robe? Is he going raiding in the lake? The second judge is actually from the Leighton Ace Attorney games, and he looks like he walks straight out of a really good LARP, because if I'm being honest, was Leighton versus Ace Attorney not just a really good LARP? The third one's British, I don't care. The fourth one is the judge from the Great Ace Attorney. His robe length is accurate. They're always floor length. They look like graduation robes. I don't know what the bling bling up here is for. I don't know how Capcom managed any of this. They couldn't get it right, any of these. But I'm also here to tell you right now that doesn't matter, because sometimes your judge is not a little guy and he is this beautiful piece of absolute filth, okay? If you haven't played the Great Ace Attorney, you should, for a lot of reasons, but one of them is because this guy is in it. This is Lord Chief Justice Strongheart from both of the Great Ace Attorney games. This man is wearing green. He is a tree. I am ready for the climb, okay? I will even forgive him for being British. Yes, Your Honor, may it please the court. Okay, anyway. We're pushing the rating there a little bit. All right, now On the other hand, maybe you do want your case tried by a jury. It is, in America at least, with our Constitution, there is a constitutional right guaranteed by various articles and amendments. Now, this is only under certain circumstances. You don't get a jury trial right for everything. Here in Maryland, for example, a lot of payable traffic tickets. If you don't stop at a stop sign or you're weaving over the lanes, you get a payable. It's only a fine. You're not going to be able to go into the district court and ask for a jury trial on that. There are rules about what you can have a jury trial on and not. Some of the things that a defendant may like is that you have all these different life experiences and knowledge that a single judge might not have, but you're going to have a lot of stuff in deliberations because you're going to have 12 different people. It's very difficult to have a criminal jury verdict overturned. In fact, I'm not sure. It might even be impossible. The jury could hate each other. I have listened to, really, jurors scream and holler at each other through the room doing their deliberations because they don't agree with each other. You put 12 strangers in a room getting paid very little. They got to sit here and do something that most people don't want to do. And then they're like aggravated and they take it out on each other sometimes. But sometimes also that's a sign that they were paying attention. So some of them feel real strongly about this thing they saw. Some of them feel real strongly about a different thing that they saw. And so sometimes it's like, okay, yeah, they're doing their jobs. Like they're talking it over, they're deliberating. They get a little aggressive, might get a little nasty, but at least they paid attention because I have seen jurors fall asleep. So that's also a thing. Maybe you don't want that. Maybe your case is kind of like boring and dry and you don't want to risk the jurors like just staring at the wall and not paying attention or like nodding off. So you might have some of these things happen or you're worried and you don't want these things to happen. I think one of the biggest reasons why a lot of people would want a jury trial is because the verdict must be unanimous. I as the state have to convince 12 people beyond a reasonable doubt of the defendant's guilt. And it's a lot easier for me to convince one judge experienced in the law of that than it is for me to convince 12 different people. So sometimes they want a jury trial just because they know it's going to make my job really friggin' difficult. On the other hand, do you want these gormless little freaks deciding your fate? This is a jury, again, from one of the great Ace Attorney games. I don't know if you guys can see it, depending on how light the whatever the hell that thing is, the projector is. I can see it on my computer. The guy on the far left, he looks like he's okay, like he's paying attention. The maid is not. She's bored out of her mind. I'm not sure how the guy with the knife got in. Like, they let him in, and then they let him keep the knife once he was picked for the jury. I don't know how that happened. That worries me a little bit. The accountant is accounting and not paying attention at all. I don't know if you can see it. I can see it on my laptop screen. I'm pretty sure the guy in the green, I don't think his eyes are facing in the same direction. I think his eyeballs are pointing in two different directions. And then the older lady in the case, she only hears like every third word that you say. So sometimes you ask for a jury of your peers and you just might get them. So this is part of trial strategy. Choose wisely. So normally at this point in the panel, I would be talking about evidence, evidentiary rules, and objections from here on out. But I don't care about that anymore. The investigations collection came out, and if you're balls deep in it like I am, we're going to talk about my man. I don't care. This presentation is all about Miles Edgeworth right now. I'm sorry, Phoenix. Goodbye. It's all about him now, okay? I might be a little bit biased. I don't think they would put me on anyone's jury. I have been doing this panel since ColossalCon East of 2023. I do change it up a little bit every single time, but congratulations, you are the inaugural audience for this new segment all about my man right here. So, and if you recognize the emotes on this slide, you are a man of culture as well. So, Glorious HD. I remember playing this on the DS when I was in college. What is going on here? So if you've never played Investigations, you have no idea what it's about, or if you have started playing it, you've played it, you might recognize this scene. One of the really awesome things about Investigations that I really like is they took this game completely out of the courtroom, and they put it on the investigation side, literally everything that happens before a defendant is actually charged. So everybody knows, obviously, that prosecutors are involved after charges are issued, but do we do anything before trial? Do we play a role in the investigation of potential criminal cases, like this game seems to depict? Yeah, we do a whole hell of a lot, actually. It's kind of annoying sometimes. So prosecutors can play a huge role in the investigation of a case. It's not our job. A prosecutor's office is a prosecuting agency. We are not an investigative agency. That is not what we do. But sometimes we are needed to assist. So one of the big things is that prosecutors, yes, we can get called to crime scenes. Generally, a crime scene that a prosecutor gets called to is going to be a homicide, potentially a vehicle fatality. We actually, at my office, we have 2 guys who are the vehicle fatality prosecutors. They could get a call from the Maryland State Police at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, and they say, hey, we need one of you to come out here. We need some help. And they got to get up and they got to go. I turned that down because I don't want to do that. So go me. Another thing you'll always see a lot is that prosecutors can accompany law enforcement when they execute search and seizure warrants. This is particularly common. I see this a lot in my office. Most offices will have what they call a narcotics task force or something investigating drug trafficking, drug crimes. Prosecutors can go on those because you can get into a lot of legal issues with serving search and seizure warrants, particularly if someone is arrested or interviewed afterwards or witnesses are interviewed on scene. Like I have down here, the limits of, Miranda. When somebody's arrested, they get their Miranda warnings. What, if anything, are the police allowed to ask them about, etc. I have gone on the execution of search and seizure warrants. Unfortunately, it tends to be for my animal cases because a lot of those cases are hoarder homes or abandoned residences. I have put on a hazmat suit and a respirator to do my job sometimes. So, we don't necessarily always have fun doing this. We go because we have to. There might be legal questions that the officers need us to answer or to assist them with. I have accompanied my humane law enforcement out on numerous search and seizure warrants, seizing evidence, seizing animals, what they can and cannot seize, etc. And these are some of the questions they might have that a prosecutor on scene is going to be able to answer. Should something be taken? Should it be searched? Is there video footage? Particularly this here, is the scene actually a crime or just an accident? For example, the vehicle fatality guys in my office, they have gone on to scenes and they have determined sometimes that really it is just an accident. Or perhaps the deceased is actually the one at fault. So prosecutors can help make those determinations right at the scene, and that saves resources and it saves time. They can help the police. They can help make a determination about whether to charge or not, whether to arrest or not. And if there's something, if it's not a criminal case, we cut it off right there, and then that's resources saved. We're going to advise on different things depending on, is it a homicide? Is it a search and seizure warrant that we're on? One of the big things that you do see a lot is that interviews of witnesses and victims, particularly child abuse victims, child sex crimes victims. Almost always a prosecutor is going to be present during the interview process. They may not be there in the room, they may be observing through the room, or they're not actually going to ask the questions, obviously, but they may be there. So these are some of the things that a prosecutor is going to help law enforcement with if they are asked to be on scene. So going back to this photograph, should an item be searched or seized? Obviously, they're going to seize the firearm. They're going to photograph the bullet hole. They're going to photograph all the books that are ransacked. Anything that's broken or moved, blood stains, the blood stains on the victim and then on the shelving over there. Surveillance footage, perhaps if there are hallway cameras or cameras at the entrances and exits to figure out who was going in and out of the building before this happened or after this happened. Who should be interviewed? Who should there be statements obtained from? Maggie Bird, Jacques Portman are the 2 characters. They do get talked to. They get interviewed, essentially. You get statements from them. You talk to them. Determining, obviously, this is a crime. This is not an accident. Something happened here. If it is a crime, who should be detained or arrested? Jacques Portsman, he is eventually the one that is arrested for this after you go through all the questioning and the investigation. And then also what questions may or may not be asked of a suspect. One particular big thing is, unlike the entirety of this game where Edgeworth is the one questioning everybody and playing 4D chess or whatever with all of them, the prosecutor on scene, whether this was his office or not, even if it's his office or if this was some random office in the building and he got called to assist the investigation to be on scene, the prosecutor will never question or interview any witness or suspect. By doing that, you turn yourself into a witness. Anything that you learned through those conversations cannot be admitted in court because there's evidentiary rules about who can say what, and you as the prosecutor can't testify. So you're not going to want to be the one to ask the questions to learn the information anyway. So all of the stuff that he does in this game, I'm like, you can't, like, yes, but you can't, like, but I love him. It's fine. It's okay. Basically what I'm saying is that I really wish that my job was just like 5D multi-dimensional telepathic mind chess instead of having to take any of this shit to court, because this would just be so much more fun. He really has it made. That's why I love him. And speaking of taking shit to court, I got 15 minutes. I think I'll be right on time. The other big thing that you're here for. I know why you're all really here. Because you want to know whether he can or cannot actually do this. So, before I go into that, because I think the answer is no, before I go into that, all court cases, whether they're civil or criminal, have what we call discovery rules. Discovery is essentially the handing over, the exchange of evidence and information in a case. Every state, federal court, etc., no matter where you are, is going to have rules about how this is done. Since Ace Attorney is overwhelmingly murder trials, let's assume, this is a big assume, guys. Let's assume Edgeworth is supposed to be following discovery rules like this one. This is Maryland's Circuit Court Discovery Rule. So I do have to follow this. We also have to assume that some form of discovery and demand actually happens in Ace Attorney. We never see the mundane side of lawyering, which is like typing stuff and filing stuff, putting stuff on USBs, printing it all out, and then reviewing it. We don't see any of that part. We just see the fun part. I am doubtful that a discovery and demand process actually happens in this game because Phoenix finds a lot of stuff on the ground and just shoves it in his pocket and whips it out when he feels like it, and lo and behold, it's exactly what he needed. So I'm doubtful they do any of this, but for the sake of this panel, I'm going to tell you about it anyway. One of the things, there's a lot of things that the state's attorney's office, that the state has to disclose to the defense without them asking for it. There are certain things that we have to hand over no matter what. One of those things, and I've omitted everything else you don't need, one of those things is exculpatory information. This is stuff that's going to negate or mitigate the defendant's guilt or punishment for whatever they're charged with. Obviously, another one of the things that's included in the discovery rules is reports or statements of experts. So an autopsy is done by a medical examiner, then they write up a report, there are photographs taken. That is exactly what they're talking about in this rule. So the autopsy report, this is what it is, this is what it's talking about. The other thing that we always have to remember at State's Attorney's Office is there's a continuing duty for both parties to produce material that is discoverable to each side as you get it. So as stuff comes in, we have to turn it over. It's not just a one and done. You turn everything over as you get it, as it comes in. And when it's requested, there's a discovery order. You have to do it promptly. You can't just sit on it until the night before trial and then go, oh, by the way, here it is. I hope you stay up late reading all of this and, ransacking the other attorney before trial, blindsiding them. There are sanctions for violating these types of rules, and that depends on the severity of the violation, but also the timing. If a lab report doesn't come in, maybe until the night before from the lab, you turn it over, you send it over, and the case might have to be continued because everybody needs a chance to look at that, needs a chance potentially to talk to the technician that did the testing, etc. So it could just be a continuance to allow everybody to review that evidence, and we'll do the trial on a different date. Depending on how egregious it is, especially if it's willful and deliberate hiding of evidence, it could be not admitted at trial at all. So if you don't turn over your smoking gun and the judge says, well, you had your chance and you blew it, that's not coming into evidence, there goes your case. So it could be it could be something as little as continuing the case to the evidence can't come in at all, and now your case is gone. So discovery violations are a legal issue for prosecuting a case, but they're also conduct that can affect an attorney's license. Again, depending on the severity, the timing. If you do anything like what Manfred von Karma does, and you hide evidence, hide exculpatory evidence, deliberately keep it under lock and key, my opinion is that you should be sentenced to 1 million years dungeon. You should have your license taken away. I don't know how he got away with this crap for 40 years, but, it is what it is. The suppression of exculpatory evidence is its own professional and ethical problem, even outside of what you're dealing with when you're prosecuting the case. So that takes me to the next very important piece of information, is when he says this. So we get like 3 hours into trial at this point before he decides to bring up the updated autopsy report, and he goes, oh yeah, by the way, I got this morning. I got this earlier. I think he had some time to disclose this before trial. I have literally emailed a defense attorney the night before or the morning of and said, hey, just got this in. I don't know if we're going to have time to look at it, if we need to continue a case. We can look at it when we're over in court. But you get it when you get it sometimes, and you just got to turn it over. I don't know why he didn't do that, because obviously he has the ability to do that. But you know what? I kind of love him anyway. Like, questionably ethical, unethical at times, but man, is he beautiful. So that runs into the next problem, is this. Again, pour one out for Maryland. We keep hitting banger after banger in the legal world. Brady versus Maryland is a foundational criminal law case. If you work in the criminal law, criminal procedure, etc., you're going to know this case because you will ride or die with your career by this case as a prosecutor. You cannot suppress evidence favorable to the accused when it's requested, whether it's where its evidence is material either to guilt or to punishment. Doesn't matter if it's good faith or bad faith. You cannot hide the exculpatory material. So I think Edgeworth is in Brady territory. That's what we call it, as a Brady violation. You're in this territory in 1-2 in Turnabout Sisters. The updated autopsy report is exculpatory. You remember, it directly contradicts Red White's testimony later in the trial about Mia getting hit twice. So this thing shows that he's lying on the stand. So think about, what if Phoenix was just a really bad defense attorney? What if he never even brought the original autopsy report up? What if the argument wasn't how the character died, but, some other portion of who was actually there? Was there a struggle, etc.? It's a different person. What if he just wasn't really good at this because it was his first trial ever? Thank you, Mia, for throwing him, into the fire, apparently, with a murder trial right off the bat. What if he never even got to that point? Would Edgeworth even have brought the updated autopsy report up? Or would he have said, wow, this guy's an idiot. I don't need to worry about this at all. And he just hid it. So again, Brady violation territory here. Most offices, mine included, are going to have a policy. We call it, when in doubt, send it out. They're going to see it all at trial anyway. Just let them look at it ahead of time. Who cares? There's no point in being like, haha, gotcha, because there's no gotcha moment. The gotcha moment could be, haha, gotcha, there goes your license. So you don't want to risk that. No case and your integrity is not worth this. No case is worth it. The fact that, so this Brady versus Maryland, this is like I said, you ride or die by this case. As a prosecutor, this is it. This is what it comes down to. How much do you want to keep your license? All that kind of thing. This case is really super important, so we know that Manfred von Karma didn't read this one either. Because after IS-7, you think he would learn his lesson. But 40 years later, no, he did not. But this isn't even the most egregious thing in these games. You think it could only get worse? Well, it could get a lot worse. I could go on. MAGFest only gave me an hour to talk about this game. I could go on for 3 or 4 more hours about the next slide, but I'm going to leave you with one because all I need is one screenshot for you to figure this out. I don't even know where to start here, but I do like the fact that apparently he wears Phoenix's badge on his lapel when he won't even wear his own. So Bridge to the Turnabout 3-5, yes, it is my favorite case in the entire series out of every single game, every case that I've played. I keep coming back to this one. I love it, but man, does it not make any goddamn sense. If you've played Investigations, if you've played the Investigations collection now, you know what the Prosecutorial Investigation Committee is, and this case has me convinced that it is one giant joke. So, we're done now. Like, we're done. We made it. What's not a joke is that I made it through this entire presentation with 5 minutes to go. Haven't lost my voice yet, so thank you all. Thank you, MAGFest, for having me come back a second year in a row and then putting me on screen. I hope I looked okay on the live stream. But have a good rest of your MAGFest, everyone. And if you see me getting really turnt in the club, just let me have a good time, please. That's all I care about. Right? Don't tempt me, because I will. All right, everyone. Thank you. Have a good rest of your con.